On a scorching afternoon deep in the Cunard Highlands, the Navy SEAL team designated Breaker 1 found themselves pinned down by a sudden ambush, 40 enemy fighters circling them like wolves through the jagged rocks, their machine guns cutting the air into burning ribbons. And as the SEALs scrambled for cover near a collapsed ridge, Lieutenant Harris, the team leader, shouted over the comms that they were outnumbered, outflanked, and out of time. Their extraction delayed by a sandstorm, their ammo dwindling with every desperate burst they fired back, until the ground vibrated under the thunder of RPGs slamming too close, forcing them to crawl lower behind broken stones while the enemy commander's voice boomed across the valley, ordering his fighters to finish the Americans. But just as panic crept into the edges of the SEALs' minds, a single sharp sniper crack sliced across the chaos, clean, cold, and impossibly precise, followed by the sudden collapse of an enemy spotter who had been calling out targets, and the SEALs froze for a heartbeat, wondering who the hell had fired that shot, because it wasn't theirs. Their marksman Daniels had been wounded and barely conscious. Yet another shot echoed, then another, each one hitting exactly where they mattered most, dropping enemy fighters from unexpected angles as if the mountains themselves had come alive to protect the SEALs. And Harris whispered into the radio, "Whoever you are, keep going," but no answer came, only the steady rhythm of death delivered with absolute mastery. And soon the enemy realized they were being hunted by an unseen ghost, a single hidden sniper who used the shifting shadows of the cliffs like a cloak, her shots coming from positions no normal shooter would ever attempt, from behind slanted boulders, from impossible inclines, from distances that should have made accuracy nearly zero. Yet every bullet landed like fate had guided it, sending the enemy commander into a frenzy as he ordered his fighters to scatter and find the phantom shooter. But every man who tried to approach her path fell silently, one round to the head, another to the heart, always one shot per kill, clean and final. And the SEALs watched in awe as the 40-man ambush crumbled, confusion spreading among the attackers as they shouted in panic about the hidden woman, because one of them had caught a glimpse, just a flash, of a small, slender figure sliding behind a ridge, her long braid whipping in the wind before disappearing again. And Harris finally realized who it might be: the fabled Ghost Falcon, a legendary female sniper rumored within special operations circles, a woman who operated alone, answered to no official command, and appeared only when the odds were hopeless, her identity classified beyond top secret, her missions erased from all records. Yet her impact whispered like myth across war zones. And as the fight intensified, she moved with lethal grace, crawling through dust, adjusting for wind by instinct, calculating bullet drop faster than digital systems, each shot dismantling the enemy's confidence until their formation shattered completely. And through the haze of smoke, the SEALs saw the once overconfident fighters retreating in raw terror. But the sniper didn't let them escape. She finished the mission with surgical precision, ending the last pockets of resistance until silence blanketed the mountains, broken only by the rushed breathing of the exhausted SEALs. And when Harris cautiously signaled for all clear, he spotted her finally emerging from behind a jut of stone. A woman in dust-covered tactical gear, her face half hidden beneath a scarf, her eyes sharp and steady like they had seen 100 lifetimes of war. And as she approached, Harris stepped forward to thank her, but she simply nodded, saying quietly, "You weren't meant to die today," her voice calm, almost gentle, before she turned to walk away. But Harris called after her, asking for her name, and she paused just long enough to answer, "No name, just doing what needs to be done." And then she vanished down the slope, blending into the wilderness as if she had never existed, leaving the SEALs alive, shaken, and forever changed by the mysterious sniper woman who saved them from certain death. And later, when the SEALs were finally extracted, they told command everything. Yet the report came back stamped with red ink. No allied sniper deployed in that region, proving once again that she was a myth the government refused to acknowledge, a ghost in human form, a protector no battlefield deserved but desperately needed. And the SEALs would carry that memory forever. 40 enemies closing in on them, hopelessness gripping their throats, until one hidden woman sniper rewrote the ending with her own bullets, one target at a time. In a moment of courage that would be remembered in their hearts long after the mountains forgot their footprints. And yet the mountains were not finished shaping the fate of the SEALs or the mysterious woman who had rescued them. Because as Harris watched her disappear between the ridges, something inside him refused to believe that she was just a mythic drifter. There was precision in her movement, discipline in her stance, and the unmistakable posture of someone who had once been part of something far greater than any single military branch. But before he could dwell on it further, the ground rumbled. Again, this time not from enemy fire, but from the distant roar of engines, and the SEALs immediately dropped low, thinking another wave of fighters was approaching, only to spot a convoy of technical trucks racing through a canyon on the far side, dust spiraling behind them. And in the lead vehicle stood a man gripping binoculars, his expression tightening as he surveyed the devastation his ambush team had suffered. This was no ordinary commander. This was Rashid Al-Mansour, the warlord whose brutality had destabilized entire provinces, a man infamous for hunting down anyone who defied him, especially lone snipers who threatened his operations. And when he saw the trail of fallen fighters scattered like broken shadows, his fury erupted into the mountains, and he vowed to hunt the hidden woman responsible, not knowing that she had already repositioned herself above his convoy, adjusting her rifle angle with the calm of someone sculpting a masterpiece, because she understood that leaving him alive would mean countless more lives lost. And with her breath held steady, her finger tightened on the trigger, sending one perfect round tearing through the engine block of the lead vehicle, forcing it to explode in a sudden bloom of fire that consumed the warlord's men, and chaos erupted as the remaining trucks swerved wildly, fighters stumbling out in disarray, giving the SEALs a fleeting glimpse of their savior once more as she executed a flawless three-shot sequence that blew out tires, destroyed cover positions, and pinned the warlord's men down long enough for Harris to rally his team and push forward to a more defensible position. And though the SEALs were battered, low on ammo, and exhausted beyond measure, they followed her lead as if she were an invisible hand guiding them through a labyrinth of death, her shots creating openings they didn't even know they needed until the moment they appeared. And she moved with supernatural awareness, understanding the terrain like it was an extension of her own mind, navigating ridges, using wind tunnels, and leveraging every elevation shift to turn the battlefield into her personal domain. And as she picked off more fighters, the warlord, realizing he was being hunted by someone far beyond his capability, fired wildly into the mountains, screaming for his men to find her. But each one who tried fell moments later with a precision hole through their helmets, and the SEALs, witnessing her unprecedented dominance, knew they were not just being saved, but being protected by someone who had already calculated every possible outcome, someone whose presence turned the tide of war itself. Yet she continued without asking for acknowledgement, without hesitation, and without fear, even when the warlord launched a flare to signal reinforcements miles away, summoning a second wave of fighters who began to converge from two separate valleys, their numbers swelling to more than 60, determined to avenge their fallen comrades. And Harris shouted into the radio for emergency support, even though he knew it wouldn't arrive in time. The storm hadn't cleared, the birds couldn't fly, and all they had was a wounded team, half-empty magazines, and one unseen woman who seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. And she didn't retreat. Instead, she advanced, sliding down the slope with breathtaking control, using gravity to accelerate her movement, her rifle slung across her body as she transitioned seamlessly to her suppressed sidearm, dropping 3 advancing scouts before they could even reach the ridge, then sprinting toward a natural arch in the rock formation where she mounted her bipod and began orchestrating the battlefield with the mind of a grandmaster, eliminating leaders first, communication runners next, then the heavy gunners who carried the PCAMs, instantly crippling the formation of the reinforcement wave. And still, the warlord, refusing to admit defeat, rallied what remained of his convoy guards and charged up the slope, his voice echoing like a curse across the valley. But the sniper did not waver. She waited, calm, composed, her breathing steady as she lined up a shot aimed not at the warlord himself, but at the thin metal support of the rock beside him, sending the bullet shattering through it, triggering a cascade of falling stones that tumbled directly into their path, crushing fighters beneath them, scattering the formation, and sending the warlord tumbling violently across the dirt, stripping him of his rifle and momentum. And in that moment, as dust swirled around him, the sniper finally stepped forward in a full view, her silhouette framed by the sun, her face still partially hidden, but her eyes blazing with a focused intensity that left even the SEALs breathless as they watched from a distance, and the warlord froze. Recognizing the legend he had heard whispers of months earlier. The woman who dismantled entire trafficking networks, single-handedly, who erased commanders in the dead of night, who moved so silently through mountains that her footsteps were mistaken for wind, and he sputtered in terror, demanding to know who she was, but she simply lifted her rifle, aimed without emotion, and said only, "A consequence," before firing the round that ended his reign forever, his body collapsing into the dust as silence swept over the battlefield, broken only by the distant rumble of retreating fighters who realized the death of their warlord meant total defeat. And with the threat eliminated, the sniper turned her attention once more to the SEALs, motioning for them to move to a safer extraction ridge, her presence now less like a ghost and more like a guardian. And she guided them through twisting paths that no map had documented, avoiding new enemy groups, outmaneuvering patrols, and leading them in total silence until they reached a high plateau where the clouds were beginning to break, signaling that evacuation was finally possible. And as the SEALs set up a perimeter and prepared to flare, Harris approached her with gratitude heavy in his voice, thanking her for saving not only their lives, but the lives of countless civilians who would have suffered under the warlord's command. But she shook her head, insisting that she didn't save them for recognition, only because injustice left unchecked always multiplies. And Harris, still trying to understand who she truly was, asked if she had once served, but she only replied, "Service ends, purpose does not," before stepping back as the distant thumping of helicopter blades echoed across the plateau, the extraction birds arriving at last, their rotors scattering dust and sending the SEALs signaling for pickup. And as they climbed aboard, Harris turned back one final time to look for her, but she was already gone, leaving behind no footprints, no presence, no trace except the lives she saved and the legend she strengthened. And as the helicopter lifted into the sky, the SEALs sat quietly, each one knowing they had witnessed something extraordinary, something beyond military classification, something that would never make it into official reports, but would live forever in whispered stories among operators. And though the helicopter carried the SEALs farther from the mountains, none of them spoke for several minutes, each man staring through the open door at the shrinking ridges below, half expecting to see the lone woman sniper standing somewhere on a cliff watching them leave. But the mountains remained silent, hiding her like they always did, and Harris clenched his jaw, knowing that command would try to dismiss everything, would claim there was no record, no operative, no woman with that level of precision authorized in that area. Yet the truth lived in the eyes of every SEAL on that bird. They had seen her, fought beside her, survived because of her, and as they returned to base, the debriefing officers listened with skepticism, scribbling notes and exchanging glances, insisting the team was exhausted, hallucinating under pressure, or misinterpreting events. But none of that changed the facts. Those fighters did not fall by accident. The warlord did not die by luck, and the SEALs did not escape because of coincidence. They were saved by a living legend who no document would ever acknowledge. And as Harris walked out of the debriefing tent, frustrated but unwavering, he paused when he saw something unexpected. A single bullet casing placed on the hood of their Humvee, polished clean, with a tiny engraving on the base, an insignia of a falcon diving through a crescent moon. And he froze, realizing this was not an accident, but a message, a quiet acknowledgement that she knew exactly where they were, how they would return, and that she watched over them even after vanishing into the mountains. And for the first time, Harris felt something more than awe. He felt protected, as if the ghost who saved them had adopted them as part of her silent responsibility. And months later, when operations across the region shifted, intelligence officers were baffled to discover that several major insurgent cells had collapsed overnight, their commanders taken out with single, precise shots, their supply lines sabotaged, their ambushes dismantled before they could begin. And though the military searched for culprits, no drone footage, satellite data, or patrol logs ever identified who was responsible. But the SEALs knew, and they exchanged quiet nods every time another report came in, their unspoken acknowledgement that the hidden woman sniper was still out there shaping the battlefield, eliminating threats others didn't even know about. And Harris sometimes wondered, what drove her? What pain or purpose forged someone into such a formidable guardian? But his questions remained unanswered until one evening, months after the ambush. He found himself deployed to a new region and received an encrypted package with no sender, containing only a small folded paper with a single line written in delicate handwriting. Some wars are fought in silence, so others may live loudly. And Harris understood then that she did not fight for recognition, rank, nation, or glory. She fought because the world was full of shadows that could not be confronted by normal means, and she had chosen to become the blade that operated in those shadows, unseen yet always present. And as he folded the note and stored it inside his vest, he felt a strange peace, a sense that he was part of something larger, a story of courage that would never be broadcast on news channels, yet would echo forever among those fortunate enough to survive because of her in years past, with many operators claiming sightings of a lone female figure on distant ridges, always appearing only at the brink of disaster, always vanishing before support arrived, her legend growing into a myth that stirred both fear and hope across war zones. And though some dismissed her as an exaggerated tale, the men who had fought beside her knew the truth burned brighter than any embellishment, because they had seen firsthand the way she shaped destiny with every silent step and every steady shot. And long after Harris retired, he would sometimes sit alone at night, remembering the day 40 enemies had closed in, the day death had seemed inevitable, the day a hidden woman sniper turned the impossible into survival. And he would whisper a quiet thank you into the darkness, unsure if she could hear, but certain she was still out there somewhere among the mountains, watching over those who walked into danger. And as this story of extraordinary courage reaches you now on her brave stories, remember to subscribe for more unbelievable, true-style tales of bravery. And before you go, tell me where you're watching from? Comment below. I want to know, because every story becomes even more powerful when shared across the world, uniting us in the courage we admire, the bravery we celebrate, and the legends that remind us that heroes can be hidden, silent, unseen, yet unforgettable forever.